I used to believe love faded quietly, like a candle burning down to its wick, warm but dying. Now I know it doesn't always go peacefully. Sometimes it splits open without warning, like a mirror shattering mid-reflection. My name is Lena. I've been married to Mark for 6 years. On paper, we're the couple people envy. A cozy home, steady jobs, no screaming matches, no scandals. We host dinner parties with mismatched wine glasses and matching smiles. From the outside, everything fits. But the truth, we stopped touching each other months ago. At first, I didn't even notice. Life crept in, work stress, grocery lists, and polite bedtime routines. He'd kiss my forehead like he was clocking out for the night. I started counting the days since we last made love. Then I stopped counting. It wasn't that he didn't love me. Mark was loyal, dependable, but dependable can feel like prison bars when what you need is warmth. He never raised his voice, never stayed out too late. But he also never looked at me like I was something he couldn't believe he had. That gaze, the one that devours and reveres, I hadn't felt it in years. Then Ethan came back into our lives, Mark's best friend from college. The kind of man who made the room seem smaller just by walking in. Tall, dark-eyed, quick with jokes that made you forget to blink. He'd been away for a few years. Tech startup in Seattle, Mark said. He was crashing with us for a week while sorting out some housing mess. The first night he arrived, I opened the door, and Ethan smiled like he remembered every version of me, past and present. Mark came up behind me and clapped Ethan on the back. They hugged like brothers. I stepped aside and Ethan brushed past, his cologne leaving a quiet trail that lingered even after he dropped his bags in the guest room. At dinner, Ethan asked me about my artwork. I hadn't painted in months, but he remembered the pieces I hung back when we lived in the old apartment. He talked about the one with the broken umbrella and the orange sky. I'd forgotten about it. Mark had too. He'd walked past it 1,000 times without once commenting. It always looked like it was about surviving something, Ethan said, sipping his wine. I liked that. I looked at him for a moment too long. Mark didn't notice. He was checking the time on his phone. That night, after the dishes were done and Mark had disappeared into the study, Ethan and I ended up alone on the couch. We were watching a movie neither of us cared about. Our knees touched. Not by accident. I didn't move mine away. For one breathless second, the air between us thickened, like something invisible wanted to be acknowledged. But I stood up and pretended to check on the dishwasher. In bed, I curled beside Mark. He didn't say a word. Didn't ask if I liked the movie, if I was tired, if I missed the way we used to be. He just turned away, his breath steady, like I was already a memory. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how little it takes to feel alive again. One conversation, one touch, one glance that says, "I see you." The next morning, I found Ethan in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping coffee, flipping through one of my old sketchbooks. I don't remember leaving it out. "You should paint again," he said, not looking up. "I wouldn't know where to start," I murmured. He finally met my eyes. "Start with what you're feeling." Something cracked inside me, not loudly, but deep, like the slow settling of ice underfoot before it breaks. Mark walked in just then, cheerfully oblivious. He kissed my cheek like a routine, poured himself coffee, and asked Ethan if he remembered their old poker nights. They laughed, shared memories I wasn't part of. I watched the two men in my kitchen, my husband and his friend, and felt like I was standing in a story that hadn't decided what kind of ending it wanted yet. But a part of me already knew. The eye mirror had already begun to crack. It began as a night like any other, but I think part of me already knew it wouldn't end that way. Some moments are rehearsed in silence long before they happen. Mark suggested a wine night, just the three of us. "Old times," he said, setting out glasses and charcuterie like a man trying to revive something already expired. I watched him pour the Merlot with clinical precision, not passion. Ethan smiled from across the table, leaning back casually, one arm draped over the back of his chair like he belonged here. Like he always had. We laughed more than usual. Mark loosened. Up with his second glass, even teased me about burning garlic bread last week. Ethan matched his energy, telling stories from their college days, stories that seemed to place Mark in another life. One where he was lighter, freer, someone I'd never met. At some point, Mark got up to take a call. "Work," he muttered, phone already pressed to his ear. He disappeared down the hall, into the study, closing the door with practiced detachment. That's when the air shifted. I turned to gather plates, to do something with my hands, but Ethan stood first. He brushed a crumb from my shoulder. Simple. Easy, and yet my skin prickled. He didn't move away. "You okay?" he asked quietly, searching my face. I nodded. It was a lie. I don't think I'd been okay for a long time. "I meant what I said," he continued, voice low. "About your art. About starting again." "It's not that simple." "Maybe it is," he said, stepping closer. "Maybe you just need someone to see you again." There it was. The sentence that shattered everything. I should have said something, should have pulled back, reminded him of where he stood. But I didn't. I just stared at him like he held a truth I'd been starving for. His hand found mine. Not in a bold, sweeping gesture, just a quiet, certain touch, like we'd already crossed the line days ago and were only now admitting it. I don't know who leaned in first. Maybe it was both of us. Maybe it was the silence. The months of absence wrapped in a single stolen second. His lips met mine. Soft, slow, reverent. Not hungry, not reckless. Like we both wanted the moment to last longer than it deserved. I should have stopped it there. I could have. But I didn't. We moved to the couch, silent but frantic inside, each movement built on all the moments we didn't act. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I felt exposed, raw, awake in a way I hadn't been in years. And still, I wondered about Mark. Would he come back into the room? Call out for more wine? Had he even noticed we were gone? Then I heard the door click. I froze. Ethan did too, breath caught mid-motion. We both turned. Mark stood at the end of the hallway, shadowed by the soft amber light of the study. His face was unreadable. No fury, no shock, just a kind of devastating stillness, the kind you see after car crashes. He didn't yell, didn't move, just stood there, watching. I opened my mouth to speak, to apologize, to explain, to beg, but no words came. What could I possibly say? That I'd lost my way? That I hadn't meant for this to happen? That his silence had felt like betrayal long before mine ever crossed a line? Ethan stood up slowly, like stepping away would undo what just happened. Mark's eyes followed him, not with hate, but with resignation. Then calmly, Mark turned and walked back into the study. The door shut behind him with a soft click. Not a slam, not a warning, just final. Ethan didn't look at me. He picked up his coat from the chair, his face now unreadable too. "I shouldn't have," he began, but left the sentence hanging. I wanted to stop him. Or maybe I wanted him to leave, so I could pretend this was some strange dream collapsing in on itself. But I said nothing. And so he walked out the door, into the cold night, leaving nothing behind but the truth we could no longer ignore. I stood in the living room, alone, the wine bottle still half full, the glasses stained with fingerprints, the couch cushions indented from what couldn't be, undone. And somewhere down the hall, behind a closed door, was my husband, silent, present, and watching even now. The morning after didn't come with explosions. No slammed doors, no shattered plates, just stillness, unnatural, heavy. I woke to the sound of the shower running. Mark was already up. The side of his bed was cold. When I stepped into the kitchen, the dishes from the night before were already clean, stacked neatly like nothing had happened. He sat at the table, reading the paper with a coffee in his hand. Calm, unreadable. "Morning," he said, without looking up. My mouth went dry. I expected rage or sorrow. maybe even a quiet demand to leave. But what I got was indifference, weaponized and precise. I nodded, walked to the sink, poured water I didn't drink. My hands trembled, but I kept them hidden. Ethan was gone. I didn't know when he left. Maybe in the middle of the night. Maybe the moment Mark turned away. His number was still in my phone, but the messages I typed and deleted remained unsent. I thought about asking Mark if we were going to talk, but the weight of his silence said everything. He wasn't ready, or maybe he'd decided words weren't worth it. That day passed like a funeral procession, slow, quiet, unnerving. We didn't speak of Ethan. We didn't speak of us. We simply existed in the same space, orbiting each other like strangers in a waiting room. By the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered him in the hallway, heart pounding, voice shaking. "Mark, please, say something." He looked at me then, really looked. His eyes were tired, hollowed out, but dry. "What do you want me to say, Lena?" "I don't know," I whispered. "Anything. Yell, cry. Ask me why." He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Why? What answer would satisfy either of us? That I stopped being enough for you? That I was blind? That he looked at you the way I haven't in years? I blinked, stunned. "So you knew?" "I'm not an idiot," he said, not bitter, just worn. "You looked at him like you used to look at me. I just didn't think you'd actually..." He trailed off, staring at the floor. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I said. He let out a short, humorless laugh. "You think that makes it better?" "No," I admitted. I was lonely, and you were so far away, even when you were right next to me." Mark's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. The silence stretched again, long, suffocating. "I miss who we used to be," I whispered. "So do I," he replied. That night I slept in the guest room, not because he asked me to, but because it felt like the right thing. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when the breaking point had truly arrived. Was it when Ethan touched my hand? When Mark stopped noticing me? Or when I convinced myself that betrayal could be justified by emptiness? In the following weeks, we went through the motions. He left for work earlier. I stayed out longer. We shared space, not intimacy. Words, not connection. One evening, I booked a therapy appointment. I didn't tell Mark. I wasn't even sure if it was for us, or just for me. The therapist asked, "Why did you do it?" And for the first time, I didn't say, "Because I was neglected." I said, "Because I was lost." She nodded. "And do you want to be found?" The question sat with me for days. Ethan never reached out again. Part of me expected a message, a half-hearted apology, or an explanation. But nothing came. He vanished like smoke after a match is blown out, hot, quick, and unforgettable. And Mark? He remained present but distant. We spoke in polite tones, shared calendars, not confessions. One evening, I asked him if he wanted me to move out. He looked at me for a long time. "I don't know yet," he said quietly. "I'm still figuring out if I'm mourning you or the version of you I used to believe in." That hurt more than yelling ever could. So I waited, for clarity, for permission, for the truth to stop echoing through our home like a ghost. Some days I still walk through the park after work, trying to remember who I was before all of this. Before silence, before the kiss, before Ethan's hand reached across a table and unraveled everything. There's no easy ending to a story like this. No clean cut, no resolution. Just pieces, some jagged, some smooth, all sharp in the wrong places. But I've started painting again. Not for him, not for Ethan, not even for redemption. Just for the part of me that still wants to feel whole again.